Hey everybody, welcome to the final day of War of the Spark set review here on the Mana Leek. I'm John as always. Today we're going to be taking a look at the remaining gold cards, including 14 Planeswalkers, I think, the colorless cards, the artifact cards, and the land cards. As always, make sure you go check out the rest of the videos in this series to get the rest of the cards, and also to hear the various disclaimers back in the first video. Most important of which is this is a limited set review. We're talking about draft, and we're talking about seal. But let's pick up where we left off yesterday with Storev, Devkarin Lich. Storev is 1 black-green for a legendary creature zombie elf wizard at rare. They're a 5/4 with trample. Whenever Storev Devkarin Lich deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, return to your hand target creature or planeswalker card in your graveyard that wasn't put there this combat. This is super solid. It's obviously hard to splash if you're not base black, but a 5/4 trample for 4 is great. We already talked about with Neheb. Getting to Gravedigger a creature or planeswalker back if I get in any damage, which it has trample. Even if this is chumped, it's going to get through damage, is super solid. I think this is a bomb. I think it's a solid A? Does A sound crazy? I don't think A sounds crazy. Let's go with A for Storev, Devkarin Dissident. Tammy, Collector of Tales, is up next. Tammy is 2 green-blue for a legendary planeswalker Tammy at rare. She's got 5 loyalty. Spells and abilities your opponent's control can't cause you to discard cards or sacrifice permanents. +1, choose a non-land card name, then reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all cards with the chosen name from among them into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. -3, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. I don't like Tammy. Her passive ability is pretty mediocre with the exception of a few cards in the entire set. There's not that much discard and there's an amount of sacrifice, but you just don't get to know that your opponent's going to have that, so I wouldn't main deck it for that ability. Her +1 is awful unless you've scryed and know what's on top of your library, because you're probably not guessing what card is going to be in there. In Limited, you're typically going to have 23 different cards, and some amount of those are going to be lands, which you can't name, so you're just not going to name the card the vast majority of the time. So you're just +1ing her to put 4 cards in your graveyard. Then I guess you can -3 her to bring a random card that you milled back to your hand. Like, you get to choose it, but it's random 4 cards that went in there plus whatever. I just have no interest in Tammy. She takes up a card slot. Everything about her feels super random. I don't want to play Tammy. I've got her at like a D. I'm never first picking her, and I'm never picking her in the first few picks, which means I'm never going to play her because somebody else is going to take her. So D for Tammy. I don't think she's any good. Teferi Time Raveler is up next. Teferi Time Raveler is 1 white-blue for a legendary planeswalker Teferi at rare. He starts with 4 loyalty. Each opponent can cast spells only any time they could cast a sorcery. +1, until your next turn, you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. -3, return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand. Draw a card. The static ability here isn't super exciting just because instants are a little bit lowish number in Limited, and a lot of them your opponent's going to be okay using as sorcery speed. It makes combat a little bit cleaner since you don't have to worry about combat tricks, but I feel like that's about it. Your opponent's removal just becomes a little bit slower, which is good, but not crazy. Sorceries aren't a huge spell type either in most Limited decks, especially blue-white. I feel like you're playing counterspells or instant speed stuff, so I don't know that being able to play your sorcery spells at instant speed is really going to make Teferi that good. Now, Teferi bouncing, that's my jam. But it's being activated once, and then it's a 2-turn wait, or 3 if I want Teferi to actually continue to live, which is very, very slow. Drawing a card's really nice. Ultimately, I think Teferi's like fine. He doesn't feel remotely as powerful as a lot of the rare walkers. I think he's around like a C+. The bounce is great. I love the bounce. But you're just not reusing it that much, and I just don't think... I don't think the +1 is really a good ability here. Taking a look, white has 1 sorcery that I even want to play, period. And yeah, it'd be good at instant speed. Blue has one that I want to play, and it would be fine at instant speed, I guess. And blue-white has a good one that we're about to talk about that doesn't really have to be at instant speed. Yeah, Teferi just doesn't look that good other than being a bounce spell for 3 mana, I guess. So I'm going to go with like a C+ on Teferi. Obviously has some constructed applications, sort of, but I'm going to go C+ on Teferi here. Not quite built for limited. 10th District Legionnaire is up next. 10th District Legionnaire is red-white for a creature human soldier at uncommon. She's a 2/2 with haste. Whenever you cast a spell that targets 10th District Legionnaire, put a +1/+1 counter on 10th District Legionnaire, then scry 1. She has Heroic. Yet another old magic ability coming back for this set. So a 2/2 haste for 2 is nice, and then if you do have combat tricks or auras, which you won't, never mind that, or something to make this bigger and scrying into more gas is great. This card's great. It'll rapidly become a must-answer threat. Starts out a tiny bit small, so I'm not going to go any higher than a B-. You do have to set her up, but it doesn't take much work. B- for 10th District Legionnaire. Very solid card. Every red-white deck wants as many copies as possible. Up next is the blue-white spell I just mentioned, Time Wipe. Time Wipe is 2 white-white-blue for a sorcery at rare. Return a creature you control to its owner's hand, then destroy all creatures. Yeah, it's my favorite kind of board wipe. It's a board wipe where I get to save something. Seems solid. A Wrath for limited that I can super get behind. The mana cost is a little bit tricky, but not that awful. Reminds me of Dune Blast from back in Concept Tarkir, which was an incredibly good Wrath. I think this is a pretty solid, like, B+. You don't get to attack in after the Wrath, which is kind of a pain, like you did with Dune Blast. But yeah, solid B+ for Time Wipe. Great first pick here, I think, and even though it's a restrictive mana cost, well, you've possibly found your lane. B+ for Time Wipe. Up next is Tulsamir, Friend to Wolves. Tulsamir is 2 green-green-white for a legendary creature Elf Scout at rare. He's a 3/3. When Tulsamir, Friend to Wolves enters the battlefield, create Voja, Friend to Elves, a legendary 3/3 green and white wolf creature token. Whenever a wolf enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 3 life, and that creature fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. Thanks to that up to 1 clause, even though this is not a must or a may trigger, you can choose 0 creatures. So the gain 3 life is a must, and the fight is technically a may. It's a must, but you can choose 0. So yeah, the card's great. It is a 5 mana 6/6, which right there is good, and it's a 5 mana 6/6 that potentially eats a small creature, an X2 or lower, and if you want, you could even just immediately kill your wolf friend, some Friend to Wolves Tulsamir is, I guess, and kill something larger. And then you still have a 3/3 left behind for 5 mana, kill a creature. Seems super good. The casting cost is a little bit restrictive. All of these sort of color 1, and then 1 mana of a color 2 cards, they're all slightly rough to first pick, but they're all mostly relatively powerful. So I'm going to go with like a solid B on Tulsamir, maybe even a B+. I don't think it's quite a bomb, but I think it's very good. So B+ for Tulsamir. Tyrant Scorn is up next. Tyrant Scorn is blue-black for an instant at uncommon. Choose 1, destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less, or return target creature to its owner's hand. This is super good, and it kills amass tokens either way. Either one of these will absolutely murder a zombie army. Card seems fantastic. It's cheap. It'll kill the little things. It'll bounce the other things. It murders armies. It resets proliferated +1/+1 counters and etc. Super solid, even splashable, I would argue. Strong pick, not exactly a first pick, but I think it's just shy of that. Solid B for Tyrant Scorn. Widespread Brutality is up next. Widespread Brutality is 1 black red for a sorcery at rare. Amass 2, then the army you amassed deals damage equal to its power to each non-army creature. So a bare minimum, this is a Pyroclasm plus a 2/2 that gets to stick around for 4 mana, and that's not bad. If you're amass heavy, This is probably just a straight up Wrath that now leaves you with an even bigger creature. Seems great. I think the card's quite solid, though you do definitely want to make sure that you are black-red en masse to get the value out of it. Even as the 2 damage version, though, if you have no zombie armies down, I think this is still totally fine. It's a B- with no other amass, and it goes a little bit higher if you are definitely going to have something more than a 2/2 when you cast this. So B- or above for widespread brutality. All right, into the hybrid planeswalkers we go. There's one for each color pair here. Up first is Angrath, Captain of Chaos. Angrath is 2 Rakdos, so 2 black, 2 red, or 2 black. For legendary planeswalker Angrath at uncommon, 5 loyalty to start. Creatures you control have menace, and for -2, you get to amass 2. Angrath is great. Angrath is one of the best uncommon walkers that we have here. 4 mana, 2/2 menace when you cast this is great. Like, that card is already fine. It's not great. We of course like 3/2s for 3 and whatnot. But you get a second one the next turn. So now we've got 4 power in menace, plus all of our other creatures have menace, which is a huge static effect. Possibly backbreaking in a go wide aggro Rakdos deck. Angrath is probably a very real role player in there, and maybe a first pick in some packs. This is definitely one of the best uncommon walkers. So I've got him at a very strong B for Angrath. Definitely want to play Angrath. Ashiok Dreamrender is next. Ashiok Dreamrender is 1 Dimir, 1 blue, 1 black, or 1 blue-black for a legendary planeswalker Ashiok at uncommon. They start with 5 loyalty counters. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. Woo. -1, target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, then exile each opponent's graveyard. I'm not sold on Ashiok. So Ashiok's static ability is flavor text. It just won't come up in limited all that often. Their -1's cute, and yes, if you do it 5 times, you've milled 2/3 of their deck, given that they have drawn a number of cards by that point. But then what? You're still going to need some backup here in order to mill more or live longer or whatnot. And remember, milling does nothing until you mill their last card. So I'm not sold on this. I do love to win a game by mill. I absolutely have a soft spot for mill, but I also have a soft spot for winning games of Magic. So I'm going to keep an eye on Ashiok. I definitely feel like they have the potential, and obviously you're going to lose to them at some point, but there's also the games where your opponent's going to be milling and it's not going to be relevant. So I'll keep an eye on it, but as is, Ashiok does nothing. I was actually going to go with like a C- on Ashiok, but thinking it through, no. Ashiok does literally nothing. Your opponent is all of a sudden going to go, oh, you're trying to mill me. I get it. Let me just hit Ashiok once. And there goes your mill plan. Ashiok's only milling 2/3 of their deck if they let you. And they're not going to let you. So, no, screw it. F. Ashiok's an F. Up next is Dovan, Hand of Control. Dovan is 2 Azorius, so 2 and a white or 2 and a blue for a legendary planeswalker Dovan at uncommon, 5 loyalty to start. Artifact, instant, and sorcery spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast. Oh no. -1, until your next turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to and dealt by target permanent an opponent controls. Dovan's static ability doesn't really matter. Artifacts, instants, and sorceries represent a relatively small percentage of most people's decks, and putting a tax of 1 on them just isn't that impactful. Dovan's bubble's interesting. It's certainly going to buy you some time, explicitly from one target threatening you. How often are you going to only have one single thing that you can't handle, though? I'm not positive. Sometimes your opponent is going to be all in on one zombie army, and you just get to, for 5 turns, say nope. Other times your opponent's going to have 4 creatures down, and you can stop 1, and you can't stop the rest. All in all, I think Dovan's a little bit situational, but just strong enough to always main deck. So I think I'm going to go with like a C+, and in some matchups, I think you probably just side Dovan out. So C+ to start on Dovan. Up next is Huatli the Sun's Heart. Huatli the Sun's Heart is 2 and a Selesnya, 2 green or 2 white for a legendary planeswalker Huatli at uncommon, 7 loyalty to start. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Note that, unlike usual, this does not let your defenders attack. -3, you gain life equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. No. Just no. This looks like it's not supported in this format, and like I said, she doesn't let defenders attack. She can't even team up with Teo's walls or anything. Her ability is also just really mediocre. Just gaining life, meh. Huatli's basically nothing but a life gain card, and we don't play those, so Huatli is an F. No interest. I am not playing a Huatli. Up next is Kaia, Bane of the Dead. Kaia, Bane of the Dead is 3 Orzhov, so 3 white, 3 black, or 3 white, or 3 black, white. For a legendary planeswalker, Kaia at uncommon, she starts with 7 loyalty. Your opponents and permanents your opponents control with hexproof can be the targets of spells and abilities as though you control as though they didn't have hexproof. That matters for like 2 cards in the entire set. -3, exile target creature. So the static ability is flavor text. It's only going to matter if you're up against the word scale crocodile or if you're up against, I guess, a hexproof army. And you're black-white, you can just kill the thing that's giving hexproof and then you're fine. But her minus ability is straight up removal that you can use twice. 6 mana removal often walks the line of playable or not playable depending on the speed of the format. So Kaia's rating could change, but I'm reasonably confident saying that this is going to be a somewhat slow format. She's probably just like a straight B+. Removing a couple creatures over a couple of turns is great. In fact, I might just push her up to an A-. She's going to be one of the best uncommon walkers as well. Relatively hard casting cost regardless of what you're in. If you're in white-black, it's going to be the easiest, of course, but she's still 6 mana. So I'm actually going to dial that back to a B+ just because of that mana cost. But she's quite good. B+ for Kaia, Bane of the Dead. Kiara Behemoth Beckoner is up next. Kiara Behemoth Beckoner is 2 green or 2 blue for a legendary planeswalker Kiara at uncommon. She starts with 7 loyalty. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. And -1, untap target permanent. I like Kiara quite a bit. She's just pure value. She ramps. She gives creatures vigilance, sort of, if you want to. She double activates tap abilities. There's a lot of utility here with her -1 ability. Plus, if you're ramping, you're probably hitting 4 power creatures, so you're drawing more cards. And she has 7 loyalty, so she has 7 activations here. Kiara is super good and is in the running for one of my favorite walkers here. Easy first pick in a lot of packs. I think she's a solid B+. Kiara is very, very, very good. Up next is Nahiri, Storm of Stone. Nahiri is 2 Boros, so 2 red or 2 white or 2 red-white. For a legendary planeswalker Nahiri at uncommon, she starts with 6 loyalty. As long as it's your turn, creatures you control have first strike. Cool. And equip abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate. There are no equip abilities in this format. -X, Nahiri Storm of Stone deals X damage to target tapped creature. So creatures having first strike on my turn, sort of cute, but I'm never playing that enchantment. I feel like we've definitely seen it before, and it's never really been that playable. And like I said, equip cost doesn't matter. There's no equipment in this set. Nahiri's ability is interesting. It's going to make your opponent not attack you, which sounds good to me. As long as you have enough loyalty, they're probably not going to turn sideways unless they're killing you or killing Nahiri or whatever. You can also use Nahiri as 4 mana, kill target creature that dealt damage to you last turn, which is not a good removal spell, because you have to have taken damage. So all in all, I think she's fine, but she is like a B- at best. Like I said, the removal spell for creatures that have already hit you are a very big step below all other types of removal. So I'm going to go for a B+ on Nahiri. She's not my favorite. I kind of want to put her at a C+, but I think the removal is still fine enough to be a B- for Nahiri. Sahih Lee Sublime Artificer is up next. Sahih Lee is 1 1 blue, 1 red, or 1 blue-red for a legendary planeswalker Sahih Lee at uncommon. She starts with 5 loyalty. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. -2, target artifact you control becomes a copy of another target artifact or creature you control until end of turn, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So another fantastic card for the blue-red spells deck, which thankfully appears very, very real in this set, as I've said many times. Sahih Lee's static effect, assuming you are playing the spells deck, is great. It's Murmuring Mystic, except you're not getting birds, you're getting servos. But the servos work with her minus ability because you could turn those servos into any other creature that you're controlling. I think she's really, really solid as long as you are in that spells deck. I think she's a solid B. Pretty good walker here. She requires a little bit of other stuff going on with your deck to be good though, so I'm not going to go any higher than a B, but B for Sahih Lee Sublime Artificer. Samut Tyrant Smasher is up next. Samut is 2 Gruul, 2 red, 2 green, or 2 red-green. For a legendary planeswalker Samut at uncommon, she starts with 5 loyalty. Creatures you control have haste, -1. Target creature gets +2/+1 and gains haste until end of turn. Scry 1. Samut's kind of interesting in that her ability is literally her signature spell, Samut Sprint, as we saw, just missing the primary use case of being a combat trick as opposed to the sorcery speed that you're doing here. Also be aware, this isn't up to 1 target creature, so if you are going to -1 her, you have to have a creature to target. You could target an opponent's creature and still get that Scry 1 if you need to, but just be aware of that. Samut seems weak. She's not great. I think Gruul decks are going to be okay with the idea of having hasty creatures and a few times having them be a little bit bigger and some scry, but she's just sort of like a C+ value walker. She's not winning the game. You still have to draw properly and draw well, which sadly is beyond your control a lot of the time. At least the Scry 1 helps out there. Yeah, I think she's just a C+. I think she's a step below a whole bunch of the other walkers in this format, so C+ for Samut. And our final hybrid walker, but we still have more planeswalkers to talk about, is Vraska's Swarm's Eminence. Vraska's Swarm's Eminence is 2 Golgari, 2 black, 2 green, or 2 black-green for a legendary planeswalker Vraska at uncommon. She starts with 5 loyalty. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a player or planeswalker, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. -2, create a 1/1 black assassin creature token with Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker. Vraska seems interesting. Obviously, it depends on how much Death Touch you're going to have. And I've got a little bit of bad news for you. There's not actually that much. There's Ronus, if you have Ronus. There's Crawl Stinger, I believe it was, whatever the basilisk-looking thing, or Daggerback Basilisk was. There's your Vizier of the Scorpion Zombie Army token, and there's Leyline Prowler. So I don't think you're actually going to have a whole great big amount of Death Touch like we have seen in other formats like Guilds of Ravnica. At least your Assassin token has Death Touch, but you've got to get your 1/1 through somehow to get her static ability to do much. So I'm not sold on that static ability actually being that great. The create a 1/1 Death Touch is really awesome for the defense, which unfortunately kind of non-bows with the Assassin's rules text of whenever it deals damage to a planeswalker, destroy it. But like I said, I don't think planeswalker destruction is super vital. There's going to be games where it's very good. Your opponent has a very scary rare planeswalker or mythic planeswalker, but the uncommon walkers are going to come down and immediately do a huge percentage of their value the first turn they come down. You're not going to have time to get your token up and figure out how to get your token through to take out most of the planeswalkers. Still, I think Vraska is totally fine just making a 1/1 Death Touch 2 times. That's not remotely the worst thing for 4 mana. So I think she's still a B-, but I wouldn't go too pie in the sky here. I don't think you're going to be getting a whole bunch of counters, and I don't think you're going to be killing planeswalkers left and right. I think basically you're making a couple Typhoid Rats, which is still fine. B- for Vraska. So that's all the colored cards done. We have some colorless cards to talk about, not artifacts, colorless cards, and then we have artifacts and lands. So let's take a look at the first colorless card. We have Karn the Great Creator. Karn the Great Creator is 4 generic mana for a legendary planeswalker Karn at rare. He has 5 loyalty. Activated abilities of artifacts your opponent's control can't be activated. +1 until your next turn, up to 1 target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness each equal to its converted mana cost. -2, you may choose an artifact card you own from outside the game, which means your sideboard, or in exile, reveal that card and put it into your hand. Absolutely unplayable trash. The static ability, your opponent's probably not going to have an artifact. If they do, it's probably one of the rare colored artifacts, which do all have activated abilities. Crew for 3 of them, or Vivian's Arcbow or Bolus's Citadel, and I guess that's okay, but still, if your opponent wants to activate that, they're going to figure out a way to get rid of Karn. +1 is not really that good, because you're probably not playing non-creature artifacts. The only thing we have are some relatively mediocre ways of fixing, as we'll see in a little bit. And getting an artifact from your sideboard, which is in your sideboard because it was so bad because you're not playing it right now, is also really bad. Karn does nothing, and Karn is a straight F. You should never, ever play Karn. Ugin the Ineffable is up next. Ugin is 6 generic mana for a legendary planeswalker Ugin at rare. He starts with 4 loyalty counters. Colorless spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. So this would be your colorless as well as your artifact spells that aren't colored. +1, exile the top card of your library face down and look at it. Create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token. When that token leaves the battlefield, put the exiled card into your hand. This is kind of Manifest. It's not exactly Manifest from Fate Reforged, but it's kind of Manifest. -3, destroy target permanent that's 1 or more colors, which is going to be the vast majority of permanents that you'll see in Limited. So manifesting without the ability to flip the card is okay, probably even good. You're making a 2/2 for +1. Ugin is protecting himself, which is fantastic. For -3, just killing probably anything that your opponent has played is super duper good. Ugin is just a fantastic planeswalker. 6 mana is a slight bit much, and 4 loyalty at start is a little bit low, but yeah, making creatures to defend yourself is awesome, and then just killing things is great too. So Ugin the Ineffable is a solid A. I'm first picking and playing Ugin in every single deck that I draft. A for Ugin. Ugin's Conjurant is the other colorless spell that we have. Ugin's Conjurant is X mana for a creature spirit monk at uncommon. It's a 0/0. Ugin's Conjurant enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. If damage would be dealt to Ugin's Conjurant, well, it has a +1/+1 counter on it. Prevent that damage, and then remove that many +1/+1 counters from Ugin's Conjurant. I'm honestly not a big fan of this. It's a vanilla test passing XX. Sure, you can cast this as a 2/2 for 2, a 6/6 for 6, a 12/12 for 12, but you should be casting the finales instead for 12. We saw this with Endless One in Battle for Zendikar, and it just wasn't good. I wanted it to be good because it was a vanilla test passer at every single stage of the game, but it never was good. Now this has the extra ability of losing counters instead of taking damage, which is worse. If I had a 6/6, I could jump block with that 6/6 if I needed to be. I could, slam that 6/6 into 2/2s for days. I slammed this 6/6 into a 2/2 and it's a 4/4 forever. That makes me pause a little bit to slam it into another 2/2, and if I do, now it's a 2/2. Now it just dies the next time a 2/2 comes in. So this card seems awful. This card seems actively awful. I don't ever really want to play it. I've got it at a C- because you know what, if I'm desperate for a creature, I guess I'll play it, but the fact that it shrinks constantly by taking damage means that I'm not even excited about playing this as a big creature. So C- for Ugin's Conjurant. I think it's actually pretty bad, and I think people are going to read this way better than it's actually going to play. Alright, we're starting to close this set review out. Onto the artifacts. There's not many. The first one we have is Firemind Vessel. Firemind Vessel is 4 generic mana for an artifact at uncommon. Firemind Vessel enters the battlefield tapped. Tap it to add 2 mana of different colors. I'm not super excited by this. 4 mana for 2 mana rock is not terribly exciting. You know what we've talked about ramp. By turn 4, your ramping should be done. It's way less impactful on turn 4. Comes into the battlefield tapped, which is bad for a mana rock because you can't use it right away to tap for something else. But it is mana fixing. If you're desperate for mana fixing, I guess you could play this. But boy, I'd probably just rather not splash whatever I'm splashing. I really want something cheaper, and as we'll see in a few cards, there is something cheaper that I like a little bit more. So Firemind Vessel I have at like it's like a D plus. If you are desperate for splashing, I still just think there's better choices, and there's better choices at common rather than uncommon. So Firemind Vessel, not a huge fan. I've got it at a D plus. God Pharaoh Statue is up next. God Pharaoh Statue is 6 generic mana for a legendary artifact at uncommon. Spells your opponents cast cost 2 more to cast. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life. I'm not super happy about this either. It's not ill-gotten inheritance. You're not gaining life off of it. 6 mana is a lot, especially to play a card that maybe just says opponent loses life a turn. I don't want to pay 2 mana for that, let alone 6 mana for that. Making your opponent's spells cost 2 more could be good, and in fact, there's going to be those games where your opponent missed land for a couple of turns. You're on 6 mana, they're on like 3 or 4, and you play this, and they're done. And that's gonna hurt. But in a lot of average games, that 2 mana extra tax isn't really gonna be that impactful on turn 6, 7, 8 when this finally comes down. So I'm not really sold on this. I have it at like a D plus as well. If you can ramp it out, I could maybe see there being a little bit more value to this, but I think people are going to read this and they're going to think, aha, I'm going to lock people out of the game always, and I just don't think that's the case. It's way too much mana, so I'm going to put this at a D, and there's going to be games where, yeah, you stumbled, it comes out, and you're just going to wish that you could quit Magic right then and there. So D for God Pharaoh Statue. Up next is Guild Globe. Guild Globe is 2 generic mana for an artifact at common. When Guild Globe enters the battlefield, draw a card. Pay 2 and tap it and sack it. Add 2 mana of different colors. I'm not really a fan of this either. I was briefly, and then I realized that you had to pay 2 mana, which means you're not getting mana, you're just filtering mana, which is not good. And you're filtering mana once, which is not good. You're drawing a card. Those are good words, but I'm just not really a fan of Guild Globe. Again, if I'm splashing, I really want the mana Geode that we're going to talk about shortly. I don't really want the Guild Globe. I'd have to be desperate. The card that I'm splashing for would have to be absolutely insane. Otherwise, I just don't have an interest in Guild Globe. I've got it again at a D+. Up next is Iron Bully. Iron Bully is 3 generic mana for an artifact creature Golem at common. It's a 1/1 with Menace. When Iron Bully enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. I'm not really interested. It's a 1/1 for 3 with Menace. It could be a 2/2 for 3, but I don't really want to play 2/2s for 3, even if they do have Menace, especially when I'm used to Boggart Brute and things like that. And I don't really want to play a 1/1 that puts a counter on something. Not for 3 mana, so I'm pretty out on Iron Bully. It's a creature, but I think it's a pretty bad creature, so I'm going to go with a D+ on Iron Bully. Up next is Mana Geode. Mana Geode is 3 generic mana for an artifact at common. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. It's Manalith, except there's more. When Mana Geode enters the battlefield, scry 1. It's a complete upgrade to Manalith, and this is the fixing that I'm okay with. It's still not the best. The best is definitely the green stuff that we've seen, the green mana dorks, the New Horizons, etc. If you want to splash for stuff really heavily, play green. Don't play blue, white, and these various artifacts. But if you do want some fixing, I think this is your best choice, Mana Geode. I've got it at like a C-. It's not that much higher than the other ones, but I think it is better than Firemind's Vessel or Guild Globe. It's repeatable. You're going to have it. You can use it as mana of the 2 colors that you're currently playing until you need your splash color. Plus, you get to scry 1. So Mana Geode C-. Again, not huge, but if you want your fixing, this is my choice for the best fixing. Up next is Prismite. Prismite is 2 generic mana for an artifact creature Golem at common. It's a 2/1. Pay 2, add 1 mana of any color. This is worse than all of the rest. It's an Unknown Shores, except it can be attacked and killed. That's just not good enough. If you're splashing, play the Mana Geode. Play the gate that we're gonna see, the Gateway Plaza. Play 3 basics of the color that you want. Don't play Prismite. Prismite, I've got it an F. I just think it's super bad. And our final artifact is Sahih Lee's Silverwing. Sahih Lee's Silverwing is 4 generic mana for an artifact creature Drake at common. It's a 2/3 flyer. When Sahih Lee's Silverwing enters the battlefield, look at the top card of target opponent's library. Then do nothing, because that's all you get to do. That's worthless. That's absolutely worthless. That is not an ability that you should give any stock to. This is a 2/3 flyer for 4. It's overcosted. It's understated. If you desperately need a creature, play it, I guess. It's a C-. It is a 2/3 flyer, but that ability is absolutely worth nothing. Nothing at all. C-, I guess, for this card, but yeah. I want to give it lower because that ability is so bad, and because newer players will look at that and they'll go, aha, I have information. And information about your opponent's hand is really not at a premium, in Limited at least. Yeah, so C- for Sahih Lee's Silverwing. All right, we are into the final group, the lands. Up first is Blast Zone. Blast Zone is a land at rare. Blast Zone enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. Tap it to add a colorless mana. Pay XX and tap it to put X charge counters on Blast Zone. Pay 3 and tap it and sacrifice it. Destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. Equal to, not equal to, or less than. Not a huge fan of Blast Zone. I don't know if it's viable, but you're hurting your mana base by playing a colorless land. You have to put mana into this to even get the charge counters up. And I feel like you're probably never happy doing this for 1. You're probably never happy doing this for 2. You want to get it up to at least 3, which means you're pumping a minimum of 6 mana into this, 4 mana, plus you have to tap it twice. And so you're using up what could have been a useful mana to kill all the 3 CMC creatures on the board, which will probably include some of yours. Yeah, I've got no interest in this. I've got it at an F. It's just way too much work for just not an ability I care for, plus you're hurting your mana base. So F for Blast Zone. I think people are going to rate it way higher. I think people are going to say, oh, this is Ratchet Bomb, but Ratchet Bomb was free to charge up. This is very not free. Up next is Emergent Zone. Emergent Zone is a land at uncommon. Tap to add a colorless mana. Pay 1, tap it, sacrifice Emergent Zone. You may cast spells this turn as though they had flash. It's cute, but I don't really want to bother with this for Limited. I could be wrong here, but I'm just not sold. You're losing a land permanently to do this, to do what? To flash in a creature, but you're down a mana, so you got to have mana for that. Cast a sorcery spell. Yeah, I'm not sold on this. I think it's a D-. It's just way too cute and not something that I want to bother with. Up next is Gateway Plaza. Gateway Plaza is not looking too good. Land gate. Gates don't matter, however. There's no gate payoffs here. At common, Gateway Plaza enters the battlefield tapped. When Gateway Plaza enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you pay 1. Tap it to add 1 mana of any color. We've come a long way. With none of the gates in this format, this gate suddenly looks like some of the better fixing in the format. If you really want to splash a card, get yourself a mana Geode or get yourself a Gateway Plaza. It's fine if you're splashing. You obviously should never, ever play this in a 2-color deck. But if you are splashing, this is going to be a solid land for you. It's like, it kind of defies grade. We'll say it's a C+ if you're splashing, but the grade doesn't mean anything here. You want it if you are splashing, you don't if you're not. InterPlanar Beacon is up next. InterPlanar Beacon is a land at uncommon. Whenever you cast a Planeswalker spell, you gain 1 life. Tap, add a colorless to your mana pool, pay 1, tap it, add 2 mana of different colors. Spend this mana only to cast Planeswalker spells. I mean, Planeswalker ramp's nice. But like we talked about, I think you're only going to have 2 or 3 in your decks typically, and so you're only going to get any utility out of this a couple of times. If you are going into multiple colors to try to play a bunch of Planeswalkers, you're hurting your mana base by playing a colorless land for all of your non-planeswalker spells. So I'm not really sold on an InterPlanar Beacon either. I think it's a D+. If you're doing very cute stuff with it, try it. But if you're not playing a ludicrous bunch of various colors of planeswalkers, I think this is just a land that you don't really play. Up next is Karns Bastion. Karns Bastion is a land at rare, tap it to add colorless, or pay 4 and tap it to proliferate. This is a cool little mana sink. If you are in the proliferate deck, I think you're going to be pretty happy to pay 5 and proliferate. Remember, you're tapping this land, which means it's a mana that you're not using, so yes, the number 4 is there, but you are paying 5. But not every deck's going to want to proliferate. I think obviously if you are blue-green, you're going to want to, and if you're green-white, you're probably going to want to. Outside of that, I don't think you're proliferating quite as much. You're not getting quite as much value out of it, but this is still a mana sink. I think I play this in basically any deck that has a few ways of having counters. It's hurting your mana base by playing a colorless land, but it is a good mana sink. But yeah, if you're not playing more than like a planeswalker or something, you just don't play this card. So it's like a B- in the right deck, and it's just not a land you should play in other decks. And our final card for this set review has felt like a long set review. There's been a lot of text because of the planeswalkers. Is Mobilized District. Mobilized District is a land at rare, tap it to add a colorless mana, pay 4, don't tap it. Mobilized District becomes a 3/3 citizen creature with vigilance until end of turn. It's still a land. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature and planeswalker you control. This is fine. A 3/3 with vigilance isn't really that impactful, but luckily it's also just a land, so you only have to bother turning it on when it is impactful. I would prefer to be paying 1 or 2 mana for this, or 0 would be very cool, but I just don't think that's going to happen very often. I think you're typically going to be paying 4 or maybe 3 for this. 2, it's not a pipe dream, but I think it's a little bit less likely that you're going to be paying 2 for it, and I think 1 or 0 is definitely somewhat of a pipe dream. So it's fine. I think it's a land that I would probably always play as long as I wasn't splashing for anything. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of cases where it costs too much or it's not relevant to have a 3/3 vigilance for a turn. So I'm just going to keep this at a C+. So that's going to wrap it up for the War of the Spark review entirely. Felt like it took forever to do this set review, and boy, who knows how this format's going to play out. I'm recording this before I did the early access streamer account, so I guess future John knows slightly how the sealed environment's going to work out, probably. But yeah, I feel like this could be the set review that I am most wrong about the most things, so maybe we'll do a top 30 cards I was wrong about in the set review video in the future. Let me know what you think of all of these cards, the gold cards, the hybrid walkers, the artifacts, etc. in the comments down below. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch at The Mana Leak. You can find me over at patreon.com/ManaLeak if you want to help out the channel that way. You could also go to inkedgaming.com, use the promo code ManaLeak10 to get 10% off your order to help the channel out as well. And you can help the channel out by clicking that thumbs up button and the subscribe button. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see y'all next time.